Right, looks like I am now live as well on Facebook. Let's just double check that I am. Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Hey, thanks for joining, everybody. Where's everybody from? See people liking the video. I don't know where any of you are right now. Hi, Chinita. You sponsored your husband and you applied in May, but he did his biometrics and medical last June 25th. But until now, what? No update on his portal. Yeah, sometimes it just takes time. Was this an inside of Canada application? He's in the Philippines. So let's take a look at the processing timeline in the Philippines right now. Processing times IRCC. Right now, the work permit processing time from outside of Canada, Philippines, is about 6 weeks. And so obviously, if you've applied back in June, it's been a significant amount of time that's passed. And so I think it's worth reaching out to IRCC via a web form to get a status update. You could potentially even contact a local member of parliament to ask what's going on. Obviously, if he's done his biometrics and medicals, it could be stuck at some stage where the officer is looking at some specific information, or it could even be that the officer has actually approved the application but actually forgotten to issue the document. That has actually happened a few times with our clients as well. And so take a look into that, because that could be the reason why. Okay. Hey, Anthony, thanks for joining. Yep, I see you, Anthony. What's up? How's it going today? Hey, Lee Cooper. Awesome. So I am going to actually go ahead, guys, and start answering some PGWP related questions on our Facebook group. If you guys don't have any questions for me specifically, if you guys have any questions, let me know, and I'd be happy to jump back and start answering questions here. But for the time being, for everyone that's watching live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, share my screen and then answer some questions from the group that I'm in. Sharing the screen, I understand. Let's see. Perfect. Chinita, can you repeat what I just said? So yeah, I can repeat myself. So if your husband has applied for his work permit, the spousal open work permit, and he's eligible and he applied back in June 2025, it's already November. It's about 6 weeks processing timeline from the Philippines right now for work permits. And so if he's done his biometrics, he's done his medical, and there's no movement at all on the application, it could mean that there's something the officer has flagged and that's delaying the application. Or secondly, it could also sometimes mean that he's already issued a decision, but he hasn't actually issued the approval. We've seen that happen a few times with our clients, where the officer actually assesses everything, he approves everything, but then he forgets to click a button or something, and it just doesn't issue the final step of requesting the passport and whatever it is. And so it's a family sponsorship. I mean, family sponsorship right now, the processing timelines are way, way longer, right? I believe the last time I checked, it was like 15 months. Processing times, IRCC. Let's take a look. Processing times for family sponsorship from outside of Canada, outside Quebec, have already applied, and you said you applied back in June. So let's see. 5 months left. And so you should be expecting a decision on the spousal sponsorship application sometime in 5 months. So 4 months if it's May 2025. And so it's still within regular processing timelines. There's nothing to worry about. But if he can get like a TRV, like a visitor visa, he could come to Canada and even apply for a spousal open work permit. So take a look at that, and potentially he'll be able to come a little bit sooner, be with family, and then, get working in Canada as well. Okay. Hey guys, for anyone that's joining now, feel free to ask any questions related to immigration. My name's Kevin. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I help out with, anything related to permanent residency, work permits, study permits, things like that. Today, I am going to be probably answering a lot of PGWP questions. I have a PGWP group on Facebook with quite a few people, and so they leave comments and posts about questions they have, and when I have time I get on the live and I answer. Just trying to play around with Hi Ali, will it be possible to renew a work permit in a low wage position? Right now, if you are doing like a low wage LMIA based spouse, like, are you talking about are you for yourself or for a spouse? For you. So, I mean, low wage LMIAs are still being approved. It's just that there is a refusal to process right now for areas where they have a unemployment rate above, what was it, 6.1%, something like that. And so, if you live in one of those areas, even if you have an employer that's willing to sponsor you and, they can't find, employees, there's a refusal to process. Canada wants to make sure that they're not taking foreign workers are not taking the jobs of positions that Canadians can take. Hey Ryan, thanks for joining. Harmful, you harm me. Okay. Hey Ryan, how have I hurt you? I'm sorry if I hurt you. Okay. How do I do this on live? This is so confusing. So the second option is to renew your permit. Oh, thank you. I'm worried that the PQ canceled. I won't be able to get permanent residence. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, there's two different ways that you can get work permits in Canada. One is through the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, and then the other is through the International Mobility Program. And so, with the temporary foreign worker program, you need to get an LMIA, and then under IMPs, there's LMI exemption codes specific to the type of work permit that you're applying for. And so, there's ones based on free trade agreements. There's ones for competitiveness. PGWPs are one of them. Spousal open work permits. There's free trade agreement based ones. Um, there's ones for French speakers, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's important that you take a look at, what work permits options you have for yourself, and then make the best decision for, what you're eligible for. In your specific situation, you did mention that you're in Quebec. I'm based in British Columbia. I'm not authorized to, provide any immigration services related to Quebec, nor am I knowledgeable. And so I think if you need the help of an immigration consultant, I would potentially reach out to somebody that is based in Quebec and that actually knows what specific Quebec programs there are. Hey everyone that's joining the live right now. If you guys have any questions related to immigration, feel free to ask. I'd be happy to help out. I'm just trying to figure out how to use this software. Honestly, I'm so slow with this computer. It's supposed to show some notes on screen, but it's not working for some reason, which is odd. Okay. All right, let's get started with answering some questions. Again, let me just share to my community that I am live right now. Let's do this, copy link. If you have any questions on me, ask. Please join directly. Comment directly on my Facebook page, as the one in the group is not connected to my software, and I won't see your questions. Okay. Okay, let's see what I can answer today. If you guys have any questions, just drop a comment and I'll be able to help answer. They approved, hadn't they? Thanks for the detailed answer. Sure, yeah, great. Let's take a look at this question. It's not loading, so I'll skip. Let's see. Hi, everyone. I've been requested to submit our passports for myself and 2 sons. My question is, what should I write on the envelope that will be used to carry the passports? Also, is there any idea about what about to send 3 passports in one envelope along with the passport request letters attached to each passport? That's fine, but I'm not sure what the nature of the question is. What should you write on the package? Okay, skipping that. Okay. So this is something that's coming up more and more, frequently. Hi, has anyone tried web forming their past CELPIP? And so what this person's getting at is when you are applying for the post-graduation work permit, unfortunately, if you don't go through the how to apply and all the instructions that IRCC gives you, and you only just log into your GC key portal, answer the questions, and apply for the PGWP, they don't make it obvious that you need to upload the IELTS result because they don't have a specific field for it. And so people that have taken their CELPIP or IELTS results have nowhere to upload it, and so they decide not to upload it and apply for the PGWP. All of those individuals that did so months ago are now receiving decisions where their applications are being refused. And so some people are preemptively, or I mean, after they submit the PGWP application, before they get the refusal, they're trying to update their application by web forming a CELPIP or IELTS test result. I think it really depends on, when you took the test, because if you took the test before you applied for the PGWP, you can make the argument that you forgot to upload it and, you still met the requirements on the date that you applied. And before the officer reaches a decision, as long as you supply it, I think it should be okay. However, let's say that you take the CELPIP exam after you submit the PGWP application, then at the end of the day, on the date that you applied for the PGWP, you didn't actually meet the requirements of the PGWP. And so it's harder then for an officer to be able to approve your application, right? And so I think date matters. And then secondly speaking, if your application was, submitted less than 6 months ago, and let's say that the 180 days since the day you completed your studies has not, lapsed yet, then you're technically still eligible to apply for a PGWP. In a situation like that, I think it's, the safest thing to do is to potentially reapply for the post-graduation work permit with all the right documents so you know for a fact that you will be approved. The only thing you need to keep in mind when you do this is that if you withdraw your application, you are out of status in Canada, and so you need to do a restoration application. And then the second thing is with applications made while on maintained status, IRCC released some program delivery instructions before where they said that if the initial application is refused, other applications submitted while on maintained status is going to be refused. And so not 100% sure how IRCC is going to handle a situation like that. And so, I would definitely make it a restoration application if possible, potentially even request withdrawal so that you know that your application for restoration will be considered. Great. Yeah. Thanks for joining, guys. My name's Kevin. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant with migration. If you guys have any questions related to immigration, work permits, study permits, anything like that, ask away in the comment section and I'll see if there's anything that I'll be able to answer. I specialize on PGWPs as well as permanent residency. As you can see, I do have a Facebook group with over, I believe, like 66,000 members, as well as the Reddit subreddit for PGWP. A lot of people having issues with PGWPs these days. It's considered one of the simplest applications that you can make, but it's actually so complex because what you do during your studies, which is going to span anywhere between 1 year to 4 years, matters. What you do after you graduate matters. Like what happens when you fly out and come back in. There's so many things related to like maintain status and non-compliance that, in my opinion, it's actually one of the most complex applications if it gets complex. If you're like a cookie cutter case, it's not, complex at all. So, getting a question in from Mellow Diaries: if a PGWP applicant is still pending, how can we proceed with the SOWP application if PGWP applicant doesn't have approved and valid work permit, assuming PGWP has an eligible job to extend SOWP? And so, Mellow Diaries, thanks for asking this question. Basically, in a situation like this, what happens is when you apply together under one application, it's linked right away, right? And so they will process the PGWP first, and once it's approved, they will process the rest of the SOWP and issue a decision together. When you apply separately, normally speaking, IRCC is supposed to wait for you, okay? And they will link the application and they will wait until the PGWP is approved. But there are cases when the officer doesn't wait and they process the SOWP without the PGWP. That's when they will refuse, saying, hey, the SOWP requirement is that the PGWP is approved. And so without a principal applicant with a valid PGWP more than 16 months, et cetera, we're going to refuse the application. But it's not in all cases that this happens. And so in your specific situation, Mellow Diaries, what you can do is you can apply. You should, provide all the supporting documentation that shows that you've already applied for the PGWP and you are, asking them to basically link the applications and to process the SOWP along with the PGWP approval. All right. Another question came in, quite a long one. Let me just read this first. Hi, I applied for the PGWP in May, got refused because my language test result was missing. I raised the web form the same day and submitted my IELTS test result that was taken back in March 2025 before my application and requested reconsideration. I also reapplied for the restoration student status plus PGWP since I'm still within the 180-day period. Okay. I previously had a job under Tier 1, which I had to leave immediately after the refusal. Good. I received 2 emails from IRCC stating that my submitted documents has been attached to my file, along with the information I provided to my inquiry for an officer to access and review. Since my refusal letter specifically mentioned that only my language proof was missing, does that mean all other submitted documents were acceptable? So just let me answer that question first. No, it doesn't mean that all other documents were acceptable. IRCC officers only need to check for one ineligibility to refuse the application. And so technically speaking, we don't know where the assessment of the officer actually ended. They're not going to sit down and check the entire application if they know they're going to refuse it, right? And so I wouldn't bet on the fact that 100% of all the other documents are fine just because they haven't said it. Even for court cases for judicial review that have gone, they'll get the judge will order the decision back to be assessed by another officer, and another document can come up as another reason for refusal. Will an officer actually review my file as mentioned in the email? They'll get it. I think it'll be considered a reconsideration request at the end of the day, right? And so the officer will take a look to see if the reconsideration has any merits. He'll check to see if he made any mistakes or error in judgment. The likely scenario is that he will maintain the refusal because you didn't meet the requirements of the program by submitting a complete application. If you had submitted it before the refusal, the story might have been a little bit different, and potentially maybe judicial review could have been something you could have considered. But at the end of the day, if you are still within the 180-day period, which I'm surprised you are, it must be like right on the cusp. Should be fine. Also, is there a chance that my reconsideration could change from refused to approved? There could be, but I wouldn't bet on it because of the fact that you didn't have a complete application. How long does a reconsideration usually take? It really depends. I've had officers get back to me within, a week to 2 weeks, all the way up to a few months. And some reconsideration requests that I've done that didn't get any responses at all. And finally, with the processing time for the PGWP reapplication with restoration of status, be shorter or longer than the first time PGWP application. And finally, will the processing time, it's going to be like the reconsideration is on its own, but the restoration is probably going to take longer than normal. Okay, second question from Deepazri. Hi, my work permit maintained status is ending tomorrow. I have already raised the web form requesting authorization letter. What else do I need to do? If you've requested it, that's good. Your maintained status doesn't end until a decision is reached on your work permit application. And so you can continue working legally, even if that letter says you can only work to a certain date, as long as a decision hasn't been reached. Let's see. I got a question from TikTok as well. I'm a personal support worker on PGWP, and my role qualifies for both tier 4 and tier 3, which is the best for PR. You don't get to pick and choose what knock tier you're in. There's only one knock code that's going to be the best fit, and that's what you use. So yeah, and so on the personal support worker, you need to take a look at the two knock codes that you think that you are that would be a good fit for you, and you need to determine what is a better fit for what I'm doing, because the two knock codes cannot be the same, right? And so you'll need to take a look to see what's going to be best, and then see if that actually helps out with PR. Just because another knock code that's less of a fit helps PR a little bit more doesn't mean you can choose it. All right. Next question. Let's see. Lakshmi. I don't have a TRV right now. That's valid. But I need to travel to India urgently. I've applied for PGWP and waiting for a decision. Is there any way I can visit my home country? You can visit your home country, but you won't be able to return. So that's the problem. And so if you leave, you need to request that your work permit application be processed in your home country. So they'll move visa offices. It's probably going to end up slowing down the processing a little bit potentially, but there's no way for you to return to Canada without having a valid TRV if you're from a visa required country. Follow-up question from Mellow Diaries. In the GC key questionnaire, we can't move on to the SOWP application unless we answer yes in the question, are you the spouse of a foreign worker who holds a valid work permit? Doesn't mean we have to answer yes here. I'm not entirely sure. I don't use the IRCC GC key that you use. I have a representative portal, so I decide what documents and what information to include. But the questionnaire itself is not an application. The questionnaire is meant to kind of customize the document checklist. And so if that answering yes to that question is the only way you can actually submit the SOWP, that's what you need to do. Okay. Sakin Momuli, I have 504 points, maxed out IELTS, 3-year PGWP experience in STEM, PGWP expiring January 2026. What are my options? Sachin, I think a lot of people are in your situation. You basically have maxed out your profile with, IELTS and everything. It's not at the highest point possible for somebody that's done like a bachelor's degree in Canada and whatever. They're in like the 512s to like 520s range. In your situation, you could consider French. Obviously, getting to French level 7 is going to assist you by increasing your points and also making you eligible for the Francophone draws. And alternatively, if you don't have any claimed foreign work experience, doing that might be able to gain you an additional 50 points on your express entry. And so those are two things I would definitely take a look at to see if your express entry profile becomes stronger because of that. And then if your PGWP is expiring in 2 months, you do need to think about how am I going to extend status in Canada. And so think about that. Does it make sense for me to go back home, gain foreign work experience, and come back with a higher score? Or do I really want to find an employer willing to sponsor me or find other work permit pathways to remain in Canada? Nairi, what if the SOWP is no longer eligible to apply for an extension? Principal applicant is tier 5 and has already applied for PR but hasn't received an AOR yet. Well, so if the spousal open work permit holder is not eligible for an extension, they need to apply for something they're eligible for, and that's likely going to be a visitor record, right? Samuel, I submitted my PGWP late last month, but I discovered that my biometrics is left with 2 years, meaning it doesn't cover you don't get 4-year PGWP, maximum of 3 years, so it doesn't cover your 3-year PGWP. I have paid the biometrics fee and sent the receipt via web form, but no response from IRCC yet. What else can I do? I mean, it's good that you've raised the web form. I would continue to follow up with them. They should be sending you a biometrics request. If they don't and they approve the PGWP for only 2 years, you can apply for a PGWP extension after redoing your biometrics. All right, let's take a look. Isam Skounti. Sorry, I butchered your name, but here we go. Initial PGWP refused because of language test. I reapplied for PGWP and restoration of status with a good one. What's the chances to get it, and what about processing time? Isam, if anybody tells you that they know what's going to happen when you do something like that, they're likely lying, because a lot of people are in your situation, and a lot of the people getting decisions lately are the first ones that have had to apply with the language test results, and they're getting refused. And so the only way that an IRCC officer is going to approve your application, if you're outside of the 180 days requirement for the PGWP, then they have to use their discretion, because you do not meet the requirements of the PGWP anymore. And so the best case scenario is IRCC says, oh my goodness, this has impacted so many students negatively. Let's help them out and maybe just exempt from a certain requirement. How likely is that going to happen? I'm not sure, because IRCC is trying to reduce the number of temporary residents in Canada, and this is a perfect excuse for them to be able to get rid of people. I have heard that some people claim that they were approved after doing this, and so I wouldn't lose all hope. So I still think that it's worthwhile trying to submit a full and complete application, even though you don't meet maybe one eligibility criteria. But there's just no guarantee at this point. And then Deep Suri, I'll get to you right after the PGWP on TikTok. From Nairi, yes, is it okay for the spousal open work permit holder to go back to their home country for now? For the PR decision, I mean, let's see. I mean, it would depend on the type of PR application too, I guess. If they're the principal applicant for the PR application, I'm not sure. If they're just a dependent, then it shouldn't really matter, but you need to update IRCC of all the changes. All right. Deep Suri, thanks for the answer. This is for my sister here. She's in her first year post-graduation work permit of 3 years and planning to get married to her boyfriend, who is a PR holder. Wonderful for her. Does she need to submit proof of relationship like chats, photos, because she's planning to apply for a sponsorship visa? What are the next steps to do? So, with spousal sponsorship, this is not my area of expertise, but it's actually my wife. She's a regulated Canadian immigration consultant as well. And so she takes care of all the spousal sponsorship related inquiries that are from. But I do obviously have more than basic knowledge than the rest of the public, and so I can answer that question for you. And so chat history, I mean, sure, it can help, but as part of a spousal sponsorship application, what IRCC officers request are, photos that span across the relationship. They're looking for letters from friends and family. The key thing is to show the genuineness of your relationship at the end of the day, right? And so the more people you involve inside those photos, the more people you get letters from, really helps to prove that this relationship is genuine, because at the end of the day, how many people are you going to recruit to try and scam the government, right? And so you need to take a look at it from the officer's perspective of trying to see, is this relationship something that has been happening over time? Does the document show this? And in terms of chats and things like that, it's definitely something you can include if your documentation is lacking in any way. And even social media posts are something that people can use as well. But if you do need help with the spousal sponsorship, obviously processing timelines are like 20 something months right now. I would recommend potentially reaching out for a consultation or even having us represent the file, because what happens if spousal sponsorship is refused and you no longer have a PGWP to remain in Canada? And so because of the long processing timeline and the devastating impacts of getting a refusal, it's worth potentially having a representative on. Going back to TikTok, within how many days will IRCC respond to a web form inquiry? It really depends. I've had web form inquiries be replied to within a day or two, and then some I don't get any replies for. And so it really depends on the situation. Will my application be refused if I only submit the biographical page of my passport? Potentially, because when you upload your passport, you're supposed to, upload every page with a marking, stamp, the bio page, all of those. And so if you have any stamps and things like that you haven't, uploaded, that's not disclosing the full document. And so it is problematic. And, at the end of the day, if that ends up being like an error or something that actually could impact the officer's decision, then it could even be considered to be misrepresentation. Okay, Mellow Diaries, probably my last question. PGWP applicant has an eligible job offer, but no pay stub yet. Is it better to submit the PGWP and SOWP together and submit pay stubs once available via web form, or submit the PGWP first? Then once all pay stubs are complete, we will apply for the SOWP separately and request a link to the PGWP. So Mellow Diaries, there is no requirement that you need to submit a pay stub. Pay stubs are circumstantial evidence that shows the person is working, but a job offer letter is all that's required for the application to be submitted and even approved. And so once you start working and get pay stubs, it's not a bad idea to upload it via web form, but it's not a requirement for the application to be submitted. I know in the group, everyone keeps saying, you need 3 pay stubs, you need 3 pay stubs. I don't know where people are getting this information, but people just make stuff up based on their experience. And so I wouldn't rely 100% on, advice that you're getting on, community chats like Facebook or Reddit. All right. From Aria, does Exterminator Fumigator Ontario license give 50 points for the certificate of qualification? Oh, that is a difficult question because I'm not sure. For the Fumigator Exterminator license, the job itself, I believe, is a skilled trades occupation, so that's good. I did have a recent client that spoke to me about this. So what he let me know, he contacted IRCC. You can only claim points for the pesticide license as it is added to the list of occupations for the certificate of qualification, but it should be an exterminator license. That doesn't answer your question. Sorry, I don't have the answer to your question, and I could take a look into it, but I don't have the time to be able to do that right now. Potentially have to wait for an answer from somebody that is more experienced with your occupation. All right, let's see. Akshit Chopra. Is it okay if I submitted a language test result through web form for the PGWP application? Um, yes, and maybe no. If you took the test before you applied for the PGWP, then you met the requirements of the program on the date that you applied. And if you're just uploading to, let the officer know, hey, I forgot a document, can you add it to file? It should be okay. I have seen cases where officers still refuse the application, acting like they never received it. But in most cases, they will approve the application and consider it. And if refused, you might even have a case that going to federal court to fight it via judicial review. But let's say that you submitted the PGWP application and then you took the IELTS or CELPIP test result. In a case like that, you never met the requirements when you applied. And so there's a higher chance that the officer is not going to consider it and refuse it. Let's see. Arshil Vahora. I need to apply for a work permit extension due to passport expiry. So should I apply on paper or online? And do I have to apply for SOWP extension for my wife? So yeah, you do need to apply for the SOWP extension for your wife. For the application itself, IRCC recommends you do it on paper. We do it online using our representative portal, and a lot of people do it online. I haven't heard of a single case where it's been refused because somebody submits online. But, I do always say, follow what IRCC says. That's the best. But that's up to you. Deep Suri, I'm new here. Can you mention your wife's Facebook page as well? We run the business together. So if you go to migration.ca, which is on the banner on the video, mygratation.ca, you'll be able to book a consultation with us. And if it's spousal related, if you leave in the notes, my wife will be joining. Isam Skunti, please, can you tell me if there are chances in percentage when reapplying for PGWP plus restoration within 180 days with the language test result? If you fully meet the eligibility requirements of the PGWP, have no inadmissibility issues, no non-compliance whatsoever, then the chances of you getting a PGWP approved, it should be 100%. Because PGWP is if you meet certain criteria, you're supposed to be approved. And so just keep that in mind. All right. How long is CWP extension taking these days? I don't know. I studied a 1+1 course for 2 years, applied for PGWP, and got a work permit of only 1 year, web form raised. No progress. How long has it been, new budster or new bud user, since you applied or asked for reconsideration, basically? Almost a month. Yeah, so like a month is such it's such a short time. I would usually give up to 2 months before following up again. If you're really anxious, you could try reaching out to a local member of parliament to see if there's anything they can do to get an update on your case. Yeah, and I wouldn't be worried about getting the full 3 years post-graduation work permit as long as you're eligible. All right. You already reached out to the MP and IRCC got your request for web form. Yeah, I mean, you know, MPs aren't that helpful sometimes because, it's not like they have the power to make an IRCC officer make a decision or anything like that. But I think you've made the right steps. And potentially speaking, if you don't get any movement on this front, I would reapply for the post graduation work permit and explain it, and hope to get a new decision with a new work permit. Another question coming in from Facebook. I received the refusal because my consultant overlooked my English exam. She didn't submit it. However, we reapplied after 5 days. My question is the processing time longer for a restoration and PGWP application than for the PGWP only? Yeah, we do find that restoration applications tend to have a longer processing timeline. And Akshit Chopra, I attached a letter of explanation with the application stating uploading IELTS later and did that within a week. Also, I did upload it with less band in original application. I had to apply because visa was expiring. I am not 100% sure what you mean by that, but I think what you mean is that you originally applied with an IELTS result that was not as good as it should be to be eligible for the PGWP, and then you retook the test after applying for the PGWP and then submitted it via web form. And in a case like that, you didn't meet the requirements of the program when you applied, and so there's a higher likelihood that the officer is going to refuse the application because you don't meet the requirements. Some real bad from TikTok. What happens if your study permit expires and you apply for a work permit? Studies are complete. Well, if your study permit expired and you haven't applied to extend your status before your study permit expired, it means you're out of status in Canada. And so you're no longer compliant with the conditions of your stay in Canada. And so you need to restore your status, and you can restore your status within 90 days of losing status in Canada. And so you need to do a restoration application. And if you're eligible for a work permit, then you can apply for a work permit. Akshit, what are the options if they refuse after 180 days of PGWP application? That's where everyone on Facebook and, Reddit in our group right now is facing, is they're outside of the eligibility period of 180 days. So what do? Everyone's reapplying, everyone's paying for restoration, but is it going to come back approved? I'm not sure, because a few people have said that they were approved, but this is all circumstantial evidence. I haven't seen an actual, work permit issued. And so actually, if you really want to make sure you're approved and you're within the 180 days now, potentially speaking, maybe it makes sense to withdraw your application and then reapply. Okay. All right. Let's go back to answering some questions on our group. Let's see if anyone has said that they've been approved too, huh? See, everyone is sending in their CELPIP and IELTS result via web form. But I've only seen a few people that have said that, I mean, it also depends on the situation too, right? Like, because was the test result valid when you submitted the PGWP and you just forgot? Or did you not meet the requirements and then you just submitted afterwards? So that's a big thing. Let's see. After my PGWP application is refused, I applied for a student status restoration, but some people are saying that I should restore under worker status when reapplying for the PGWP, which is the right one. And so, this is a cause of confusion for a lot of people. When you are restoring status, you're not actually restoring your status to anything. You're restoring your temporary resident status. And so, in any application that you submit, like let's say you're doing a PGWP application in IM5710, there's a box at the top that says, "Are you, like, I'd like to restore my status," or something like that. If you click that, then you have to pay the restoration fees. And so that's basically what it's getting at. You don't get to choose, like, I'm restoring my status as a student. There's nothing like that. The only caveat here, though, with post-graduation work permits is that IRCC has a system limitation. And so if you need to restore your status and get a post-graduation work permit, what you need to do is you restore your status and pay for study permit fees. So when you go to IRCC fees, yeah, you guys are on the live, so you can see IRCC fees. You'll be able to see pay online. No, this is not what I'm looking for. IRCC pay fees. Where's the fee list? Anyways, whatever, I'll just show you from here. So technically speaking, when you are doing the PGWP and you need to restore status, you need to pay for this, which is your restoration of status fee and a study permit fee. You're not restoring your status as a student, as this would say. Like, this makes it really confusing. But when you restore status, you're just restoring your temporary resident status. And then secondly, on top of that, because you're doing a work permit application, you need to pay for the open work permit holder fee because you're doing a PGWP and it's an open work permit. And you need to pay for the work permit processing fee. And so when you actually go to pay the fees, you select like 111 next to all of these and then pay everything at once and you upload the fee receipt. Does that make sense, Ocean? I'll move on to Manan's question. My IELTS result will expire in February, and I submitted my PGWP in June. Is it okay if it expires while in process? Yeah, it doesn't matter if it expires while in process. From Angeli, is there a way for me to ask IRCC for help in expediting my application due to my son's medical condition? Additionally, I just gave birth and we cannot work due to work to restoration because of my English test. You gave birth and you can't work due to restoration. What do you mean due to restoration? Yeah, Angelia, I'd be happy to help answer your question. But I'm not entirely sure exactly what you're asking. Um, and so you're going to need to provide me with a little bit more information. What medical condition? And you just gave birth and you cannot work due to restoration, like restoring what? Because of your English test result. Like none of this is making sense to me in the question. So feel free to rephrase and I'll get back to you on that. Got a question on TikTok. Can I apply for a bridging open work permit? I receive my AOR only, not eligibility. I mean, most of the times AOR is enough. I'm not sure what you mean by eligibility, but yeah. So answering Isam's question again, what if you pay restoration plus work permit, which is more than the 389.75 in order to restore and get your PGWP? Well, it IRCC fee list. So technically, when you're paying the study permit and the restoration fee, 389.75, right? Plus, you're paying the worker fees of 155 plus 155 plus 100. So it comes out to $644.75. And so if you only paid 389.75, it doesn't meet the fee requirement. Real bad. Study permit is about to expire, and I feel like I will. Study permit is about to expire, and I feel like I will not get my letter of completion in time. Then you need to apply to extend your study permit. But obviously, the key thing you need to keep in consideration there is if you apply for a post graduation work permit while you're on maintained status, then you're not eligible to begin working right away. And right now, the processing timeline's above 200 days, right? And so during all that time, you're going to need to remain in Canada and not be able to work. And so another option there is you could go back home and apply from your home country because processing timelines for work permits are much faster abroad. And so just keep that in mind because for some people, it's not financially feasible to remain in Canada. If a course is eligible for PGWP, does it mean it's eligible for an SOWP? No. Marlon Soloso. My work permit was refused and I applied for a restoration as a visitor, as my spouse has no eligible job for me to reapply for a work permit. Okay. Is it correct what we did? And if my visitor record is approved, can I still apply for a work permit inside Canada if my spouse finds an eligible job? Yeah, so Merlon, yes, if you were refused and you have no other way to remain in Canada, then restoration as a visitor application is fine. And once you're approved and your spouse also gets the PGWP and the job that's required to become eligible for the SOWP, then yes, even as a visitor, you will be able to apply. Because normally visitors can't apply for work permits in Canada, but there are special exemptions. I want to apply for a work permit while my study permit is valid. It expires at the end of November. And when do you expect to get your letter of completion real bad? Like, has the school let you know when they expect to issue it? Hopefully before the 20th. Yeah, I mean, if you get it before the 20th, then you can prepare the application and submit it. But I would reach out to your, student advisor or the immigration consultant and try and expedite it or anything like that. Because otherwise, you're going to be stuck in Canada, not able to work for 200 days plus. All right, a question from Emmanuel. I'll get to you right after I answer Ocean. I've been talking to her for a few minutes now. I've seen people contact their MP for help with reconsideration after refused PGWP. Can an MP really help? I mean, the MP can, try and make a case for you, but most of the time, all the power the MP has is to request status updates from IRCC. And so that's generally the extent of their power. But I have seen some MPs try and make an argument or whatnot. But like the thing is, at the end of the day, for people that are, requesting reconsideration for refused PGWPs because they didn't meet the requirements, is very hard for an MP to do anything, because even if they refuse it again, even if you do restoration and they refuse it again, it doesn't work, because how is this going to hold up in the court of law when the officer followed every manual, all the requirements for the PGWP were checked, and it was the applicant's mistake for not uploading it. And so unfortunately it's really an uphill battle. Getting back to Emmanuel's question. Hi, good day. I need help in clarifying my position. I applied for a PGWP, but it was refused because I forgot to attach test results, and my kids' study permits were refused, but mine wasn't refused at that time. It was in final decision, but I immediately applied for a second PGWP application through an immigration agent. So it was so as to submit every document, and I was giving a second letter of authorization. So my application was finally refused in September 2025. Am I in a good position? Do I need to do something? Was I supposed to do a restoration application? But I didn't because I have a second authorization letter before the refusal letter was sent to me. I'm not sure I understand your situation specifically, Emmanuel. If you had applied for the second PGWP while you had maintained status, then no, you cannot continue working. But if you had applied for the second PGWP before you lost status, let's say that you had a study permit that was valid. A study permit is valid for up to 90 days after you complete your studies, or the end date that's on the study permit, whatever is earlier. And so even if your study permit said 1 year longer, it would expire within 90 days, and that it would be invalid within 90 days. And then if it was valid for shorter, then it expires before the 90 days. And so if you had applied for the second PGWP before you lost status in Canada, then it does maintain your status, even though the first application was refused. But if you applied while on maintained status, which means your study permit's now invalid, then you wouldn't be able to do that. Getting to Angeli's question, we received a refusal due to the English language test. And see how many of these cases are coming up, and it's so annoying, because it was avoidable from IRCC's end if they had just posted instructions on the portal. We received a refusal due to the English test. We have reapplied for the PGWP and restoration, but my husband and I are currently unable to work. I'd like to know if there's a way we can request expedition and explain our situation. Heart disease and requires treatment every 4 weeks. Additionally, I have a 3-month-old baby, so my husband really needs to find work. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's nothing that the IRCC can do to really expedite, the application. If you're refused and you're out of status and you're no longer able to remain in Canada, like a temporary resident permit might be something you could apply for along with a work permit. But just taking a look at the regular process of doing things, IRCC is generally not going to provide exceptions in a case like this, unfortunately. So let's see. Any thoughts on human capital stream tech draw? Human capital priority stream for OIMP is probably, I think, what you're referring to. I don't know. OIMP hasn't been doing much, human capital priority stream draws, and so I'm not entirely sure what to expect. But the good news is, PNP allocations have gone up almost, by 2 times, right? And so hopefully it means that you'll be seeing more and more draws. All right, Marlone. Thank you, sir. One more thing. I withdraw my visitor record application as I am planning to go back home on November 20th. I was advised not to withdraw my application until I depart. So I went for my RCC that I want to cancel the withdrawal of my visitor record. Will there be any impact on future applications since I have no status for 5 days? The withdrawal doesn't happen on the date that you request it. Withdrawal happens when IRCC withdraws the application. And so, if they withdraw it before you leave, then you'll be out of status in Canada. But if they withdraw it after you leave, then it should be fine. I sent the withdrawal request November 3rd, then sent the cancellation of withdrawal on November 8th. Yeah, funny situation, but normally speaking, it usually takes them at least a few weeks for them to, withdraw an application. And so hopefully they don't make a decision. I've never ever done or have heard of a withdrawal request and then the cancellation of a withdrawal request. But even if they do withdraw it and you fall out of status, you're leaving right away. And so as long as in the future you explain it in every application that you make on the background information section at the end of the document application form, it's fine. It's not going to make a significant difference. IRCC tagged my application as withdrawn. Oh, they tagged it, but they have not yet emailed. Okay, so if they've withdrawn the application, they've withdrawn it. They're not going to reopen a case after they withdrew it. And so you're technically out of status in Canada if you don't have any other status. And so, in future applications, if they ever ask you, have you ever, stayed beyond the days allowed in any country, you need to answer yes to that and say, like, I ran out of status in Canada for this reason, and you need to explain. Question from Ja. SOWP eligibility. Main applicant is working as a personal support worker, but NOC is same with 13102. What's 13102? Let's see. 13102 is a payroll administrator. That's not a personal support worker. I'm not sure what you mean by the person is working as a personal support worker, but their NOC is different. Like, what are their duties? The job title never matters. It's what the duties you do are. And so if you have a title of a payroll administrator, and then you're doing the duties of a personal support worker, you're a personal support worker. You can't get to pick and choose. You do the job that you have, basically. Hello, where's your location? We're located in Burnaby, BC. Marlone, even if I have 90 days left, even if I have 90 days left more, 90 days of what is left, Marlone? Can you just confirm that? And guys, if anybody wants to just join the call, you can join through the link that I've just put in chat. You can request to join the call, and then we can discuss your situation. Sorry for TikTok. I haven't posted the link there because it's just not connected to my software. So a personal support worker and nurse aides, orderlies, and patient service associates are different. So again, Ja, you need to take a look to see, what are the job duties, and then you need to choose from the two different NOC codes which is going to be the better fit. You don't get to choose one because it helps your permanent residency or because it helps you get spousal open work permit. Merlone for restoration. Yeah, so Merlone, what happens is if you lose status in Canada, you can restore your status within 90 days, but it doesn't change the fact that you lost status. So IRCC is giving you a grace period to be able to restore your status, but between the time that you're approved of that restoration application versus the time that lost your status, that's all illegal stay in Canada at the end of the day, and so that's non-compliance, and so you do need to explain on every application because IRCC wants to make sure they're not admitting people that are breaking the law and not listening to the immigration laws, right? And so if you have significant history of always, losing status in Canada, then the chances of you being refused for future applications because the officer doesn't believe you're going to leave Canada at the end of your stay becomes higher and higher and higher. I paid $394.75 to restore instead of $389.75. Should this be a problem for my reapplication? It should be something along the lines of $600 because the $394.75 or $389.75, that's for the study permit plus restoration. You still also need to pay on top of that the $155 work permit processing and $100 open work permit holder fee. If your employer is an employment agency with a yearly contract, are you eligible to apply for PR? It depends on the PR program, but if let's say we're talking about express entry, the experience that you gain working for an agency still counts as work experience. As long as it's a skilled occupation, that's fine. So Starlin, if you are working in NOC 12112 for 2 years, for express entry purposes, it still counts as work experience, but there are certain programs like permanent residency that requires employer sponsorship. A lot of those programs are not going to allow an agency to sponsor you because the agency is not the actual company that you're working for, or like the yeah so like sometimes for specific PR programs that have an employer component it's not going to work, but for express entry if you're only claiming work experience, then it's fine. Merlone, so your situation's actually like way worse than I had initially thought. So you were initially refused of your let's say SOWP application back in September 26th. And so within 90 days, you applied for a visitor record restoration, but then you canceled your restoration visitor record application and they withdrew it, and you've been staying in Canada since. So you can't even restore your status. You withdrew your restoration application. It's 90 days from the day you were initially refused. And so, oh wait, I mean you're still within restoration period actually because it's September 26th. But yeah, you withdrew that, and so during all the time, so any day between September 26th to 28th, that has no status in Canada, so you overstayed during those 2 days, right? And then after you withdrew the application as well, all of those days are staying in Canada beyond the expiry date of any status that you have, and so that is non-compliance. Although it's not quite significant if it's only one time, right, for future applications, because it's something that IRCC allows. But you need to now disclose this every time you apply for any temporary residence application in the background declaration section. So it's not as serious as I thought, because it was only September 26th. I thought you were beyond the 90 days. But still, even if you lose status for 2 days and you apply to restore, you're still out of status. It doesn't mean that just because you submitted a restoration application that you're suddenly in status. They're just giving you an opportunity to fix your out of status issue. Okay. Question from Devin. Hey, Devin. 2 questions here. I have a family emergency that requires me to go back home, but my PGWP has been in process since June 2025. If I travel, will I be able to return to Canada? Also, if I have a work opportunity in Paris this January and I need the PGWP for the visa, is there any way to expedite the process? So no, you can't expedite the PGWP because you have a job opportunity in Paris. Secondly, if you fly back home, that's totally allowed as long as you have a valid TRV or a electronic travel authorization, an ETA. Then you can fly back to Canada and continue working. However, if you don't have a valid TRV, then you're going to need to wait until the PGWP is approved for you to come back to Canada. If you leave Canada because you can't come back, you need to let IRCC know that your address has changed. If your address is changed to a foreign country, then IRCC will likely send the application to a visa office outside of Canada for processing. So it's you paid more, so I can't imagine that they'll give you any issue for it, but I'm not sure. I've never paid the wrong fee as a consultant, so I can't give you like any experience, stories about paying the wrong fees and paying more, because we always pay the right fees. Sawadee Who's VP Luis Gonzalez? Oh, maybe this person's Thai. Are you Thai, VP Luis Gonzalez? Your name doesn't seem Thai. Emmanuel with a question, please clarify. 90 days windows to apply for restoration starts from the day one gets refusal letter, right? It's from the date that you get the refusal letter after you lose status. And so let's say that your study permit expired January 1st, and then you're on maintained status and you're refused, let's say February 1st. February 1st would be the day the 90-day starts counting. AJ, hello. My visa are expired by June 2026 under vulnerable program. Yeah, sorry you had to apply for under that program, but yeah, if it's expiring in 7 months, you should take a look at extending it somehow. All right, guys, I've been here for over an hour now, so I think I'm going to end this stream. Thanks so much for joining, guys. I hope you all found this live helpful. If it helped you out, please, feel free to give me a like. And yeah, wishing you all the best. If you guys need any help for PR, PGWP, anything like that, visit my website. It's on the banner above, and I'll be able to help. Have a good one.